Hi all and welcome to the BotWar Videocast. Tonight we're going to talk all things Deceiver. I'm joined by our regulars of Anthony and Drew from Nine Tail Hobbies and Stuart, expert painter extraordinaire. How is everybody?
Good, good.
Yeah. All right. Well,
That was extra enthusiasm for a Monday.
We're so excited. We've got an exciting show. Look, Deceivers is the big topic. It's the original big bad of obviously the BotWar universe. And I know that I'm going to give Anthony a chance to give us a little bit of lore, like a 5-minute lore piece in a moment. But obviously, it's all about the Deceivers and Galaxy and how he corrupts things and you know how the Deceivers are going to ultimately become infestors and the whole bit. But I'm going to throw across to Anthony now. He'll fill you in a little bit on obviously the lore, and then we're going to get into talk some pretty nasty lists. And I must add, our lists are all vastly different tonight, so that's going to be an interesting discussion point in itself.
We should say that this episode is dedicated to old Richard Willett, who suggested that we go back and visit the Deceivers rather than take on all the new stuff all the time. So the Deceivers probably haven't got some love for a little while. So we thought it was a good idea to have a look at it. So what am I talking about? The law.
Oh, we've got to get a Deceivers lore. I mean, it's pretty important. It frames the whole BotWar universe.
Can I give some background actually I'll give some background to it, which will actually help the lore a little bit to understand. Is that I know it sounds ridiculous, but Deceivers have nothing to do with other giant robot franchises, and they weren't their lore was not inspired by them in any way. And it was actually not until later that I realized, oh geez, D word. And I didn't really realize that they were the same. So Deceivers are actually the Valiants and the Deceivers story comes from the War in Heaven from the Bible. So it's a third of the angels followed Satan or whatever. So Galaxy essentially, and it's the same story as really the Horus Heresy from Games Workshop, right? And so that's where they came from. And so I didn't want to use the word demons because it was just like too much. So I thought, what do they do? They deceive. So yeah, deceivers. So that's how that came about. And it wasn't until later that someone actually said to me, deceivers, other that we're not mentioning, which seems silly. But and I was just like, oh crap. Yeah, I didn't know that. But yeah, so that's really what that's about. Sort of Galaxy is sort of like your sort of Satan character that goes around and sows dissension among all these different places and things like that. So he originally started off as a playable character way back in the first edition. And then I decided to make him like a big bad in the background type of character. So with his hand in all the machinations of stuff that's going on. So, and the Deceivers sort of were Valiants, and in the prison they sort of became twisted because of their separation from the One. So that's sort of how that all appeared. And in the development side of things, I started to try and mix in I think one of the heavy inspirations for them were Chaos Space Marines, and mixing them with like your giant robot style stuff. So that's sort of where all their spikes and all that sort of stuff came from. So, but really they're probably now one of the least developed forces meaning that they haven't had as many reiterations or reimaginings of their faction compared to some of the others. So yeah, there's still you'll probably see some. I think we've already seen some stylized changes with Craw's Warband that I hinted a couple of months ago for how they sort of will be. Like there's going to be a lot of like things like your Cerebus type three-headed dogs and all that sort of stuff like that coming through eventually. But it's a fair way off. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how they played. They're pretty strong. They didn't really need anything major, but they've got the biggest faction guide and one of the earliest faction guides. So I don't know whether that's what you wanted. Mark, you probably wanted more actual lore stuff, but
No,
but they're searching. Their purpose is that they're searching. They've all been sort of released from prison, because their prison was picked up by Coils. Coils then accidentally released Malakon, who then went and killed everybody and then released, of which the famous story about Candy from Special Branch, she was the only survivor, because she was dressed as a bear. And then so Malakon then started releasing all the other Deceivers. But he couldn't release Galaxy because Galaxy's in a special prison within the prison and it only can be released with the key, which we think most of us know by now that the key is Sordana's sword. So, and the Sordana sword needs to sort of merge with the space portal in order to release Galaxy.
And Narcitron released Galaxy, but Mega Tyrant not so much.
Well, I'm not sure really whether Narcitron does want to release Galaxy. I think both of those, I know Narcitron's not a tyrant, but he's sort of on the tyrant level. I don't think any of the tyrants really want to release Galaxy, because if they do, then their power is less, right? So Narcitrons, they're just approaching it differently. Mega Tyrant's probably more honest and is like openly doesn't want to really bother about it.
Yeah, he doesn't want his
Whereas Narcitron's like more psychopath type. Yeah, of course I do. Not really. That's sort of, so he's sort of like that sort of toady character in between. He's like, yes, Galaxy, yes, I'll do that, Galaxy. And then, oh, we failed again. What are you going to do? It's like that sort of character. Because he's like, Narcitron is about narcissistic, his sort of pride, right? So he's very manipulative like that. It's like, yeah, of course, but not really wanting to do any of it. So I think it's probably going to take one of the dumber Deceivers like Craw and stuff like that to, if Galaxy ever got released. I mean, that's really the apocalypse, is when Galaxy gets released. So
watch for
I'm not
to release.
Well, I'm not sure it'll ever happen as such. Like, it's one of those things where there's, in the Saturday morning cartoons, the villain has this purpose that every time he's like thwarted at the end of it, like by something. So that's sort of what it's about. I didn't really sort of try and give all the lore out straight away through the faction guides and stuff like that, because there's something about discovering and speculating and stuff like that it makes it a bit more exciting, I think.
And the only other thing that I'd want to add regarding the Deceivers and the lore is they don't create anything, do they?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. They're all about destruction, really. So that 100%. And yeah, I guess it's the law of entropy in full swing. It's like everything about them is breaking down, including themselves.
So they don't create, they only break down. So as I say, we've mentioned about Electro Tyrant's army in the past, which is an offshoot of the Deceivers army. The bots are actually from Coils.
From Professor Skew, actually.
Taken that technology. So,
yeah.
But they didn't create that technology. They just acquired it.
Correct.
So again, they don't create anything. And so that's a very specific thing in their faction, that all of their their creations are things that they've stolen or otherwise taken or reclaimed.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I try. It's quite hard to like write a villainous faction with no quality that would be good in some way. Do you know what I mean? Like it is quite. I find that quite a challenge because as you're writing, and he did this. Oh, well, actually, you could sort of see that as a good quality at least. But yeah, I really want to put no good quality in any of them at all. To the point, like the hardest one was like, how do they stay together? Like, because how do they follow orders and stuff like that if they've got no good qualities at all? Because that would be loyalty or whatever. But a lot of it, I think, is ruled by fear. And yeah, so the weaker ones, I guess, live by their cunning and deviousness, while the stronger ones live by their brute force
And power.
Yeah, and power.
I think you did an interesting thing with that though when you did the infestors by, Mega Tyrant held the queen down and experimented on her until she became the queen and everything. So that was kind of like an interesting fear inducing thing for them. Like, look, this could be you too. So
yeah, well, he also I wanted to show as well that she was Siphine's sister and a capable general in his force. And I wanted to show that he doesn't care about anybody. Like every person, no matter how competent, is just another tool to be used or manipulated or whatever. And I find when you get those sort of you find those traits in people, as like as well. And it's just like there seems to be no redeeming sort of like quality about that. Is that everything that a person is like they're not really seen as a person or with anything. They're just seen as like, okay, well, how can I manipulate and use this for my advantage? And that's sort of what Mega Tyrant was doing. Like he wanted to take a capable general and just see what would happen, because he obviously couldn't use himself, but he was more worried about himself, right? Like, so he had to take someone who was powerful like himself, rather than just a low level minion. Because if a low level minion turned, he wouldn't get as much data as if someone that was close to his level. Obviously he couldn't take someone exactly his level because he was a tyrant, but like someone who's stronger and close to his level would give him the most accurate data about what would happen to himself, because that's really all he cared about.
Yeah. But there's no guarantee that's what's going to happen to him either when he becomes an infestor.
Well, correct. Yeah, correct. It was a weird thing happened in the sense that the torture was terrible for her, that it split her mind. And that's the only reason the queen can exist, is because all the other infestors sort of have no mind. So in one side, the queen has no mind. She's sort of like a beast. But on the other side, she still has like a split mind of the general that sort of split off. So that's the only reason that she can control the infestors, because she is both infestor and deceiver in a way. So, but I imagine that if there was actual a cartoon show, that character would be quite cool in the sense that 1 minute she would be like this beast, and then the next minute she'd talk in a different voice and be like someone completely different.
Split personality.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's the only reason that the queen was created in such a way.
The only other thing I wanted to mention regarding Deceivers is that the overlords have been manipulated by Galaxy as well.
Yeah.
He's the master mutator. So, or Galaxy is the master mutator that they actually refer back to. So,
and of course the elementals are all children of Galaxy. So I can't remember which book it was in now. I hope I've written it. I might not have written it yet, but
I'd say that's news to me. I don't remember reading that.
yeah, I can't remember what it was in one of the latest ones. Maybe the Atlantean book. That the elementals are all children of Galaxy. So that's who they are. They're essentially the Titans from Greek mythology, and or I guess the Nephilim, from I don't know, Bible mythology or whatever it is. That they're these giant beasts, which are a mixture of sort of spirit and flesh, I guess, in a way. But in this case, obviously, a mixture of elements and Galaxy. So there's obviously Galaxy, if you connect it, like he's the master mutator from the Overlords. Well, if he's like so master mutator, then he can certainly put his own essence into the elements to create the elementals. So, so that's sort of how that all connects.
And that's why I said that the Deceivers are the center of the whole BotWar universe in a way, and where we've ended up where we are, because Galaxy has effectively influenced a range of different factions from the ground up.
Yeah, well, I guess the question then is who influences Galaxy? So, I mean, it's quite interesting in a way. Like, when you connect it all together, if you took out Galaxy, then you wouldn't have the elementals, then you wouldn't have Atlantica, then you wouldn't have the first Atlantean War, then you would, and then you'd have Coils had taken over the democracy and wouldn't have been discovered.
Yep.
So you just got to wonder, it's like, okay, all these things like connect together, but if you actually removed one of the things, then you would still be in a position where there's no Valiants, no Elementals, no Overlords, but Coils has taken over the entire world in their quest to be gods themselves.
And that will lead us back to Coils when we get to that faction guide. So that gives everybody a little bit of a background of obviously Deceiver lore in a very short period of time. There's plenty to read. I know there's plenty of lore there, both in the Galaxy Trader magazines and obviously in the faction guide itself. And as Anthony mentioned, obviously, the funny story in the bear costume and
it's actually I think that's the most popular story in BotWar, I think, is the story of Candy and
she was left alone because she was dressed as a bear, and so
it confused Melicon's senses. So he's just like, it's just a nothing.
Yeah. So he killed all the humans except the human dressed as a bear.
Yeah.
So
well, I don't think he really saw her. Like, she was hiding, but like he couldn't sense her properly because it was sort of obscured by the fact that it didn't match, the visuals didn't match what's going on.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do now is we're going to throw across to Anthony's list. So I'm going to bring it up on the screen. And we're going to talk some, in this particular case, some very, very specific Deceiver faction lists. We'll start with Anthony, as I said. Now, I've rearranged these a little bit. So obviously we've got Anthony's list and all the characteristics and special abilities. But at the bottom, we've got some totals. And I just thought we'd just for everybody, just point out what they mean. So under points, the total number of points, we always look for 100 points per list. Energy, how much energy they have for the whole game, depending on how many models they are. Obviously, as models are eliminated, that energy level will go down. So the higher the energy level, the more energy you have to play. The lower the energy, the harder it is to do your activations. Strategic rating is obviously how quickly or how slowly these lists will work. The lower the SR rating, the faster that they'll operate. So you're going to be looking at like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If the higher this number at the bottom, that means they're going to be more 8, 9, or 10. And that can be interesting when we look at our lists, just to sort of go, is this a faster moving team, a slower moving team, or something?
Well, we're getting technical now, Mark. This is all sort of we're getting in, crunching some numbers.
We're talking meta, so I think that's sort of worthwhile because when we look at our lists, this sort of has an effect. Obviously, how much movement's possible. Although I will say for Deceivers, most of them have air support, or a lot of them have air support, which obviously allows them to do a triple movement. Isn't that correct, Anthony?
Yes.
So once per game. So that may or may not be as important, but obviously the higher that number is, the more they can move. Range attack, whether they're a range attack team or a close attack team. So the higher the RA, that means the more capable they are at shooting. The higher the CA, the better they are at fighting. So if you were talking about a faction that's very good at close assault, you'd expect that number to be up. Trashers would be a good example of that. Their CA will be high, but their range attack will probably be quite low. Obviously, how many shields they have to defend against, and obviously how many hit points. So when Anthony talks about his list, we'll be having a look at these numbers at the end, and that will help us with our comparison between lists on whether this list will match your play style, depending on whether you like range attack or whether you like close attack or whether you like much more of a, I'm going to sit on this actual objective and just take damage because I've got lots of shields, or depending on your play style. So I just thought that it was an important justification of why those totals are there and how that will lead some of our, or hopefully will lead some of our discussion tonight. And with that in mind, I'm going to throw across to Anthony and get him to talk us through our list.
Right. So this here is a variation on the list that I normally play for Deceivers. Now, depending which country you're in, it'll be viewed as very beardy or cheesy. I know different countries use those words interchangeably. So my idea here is like one of the very unique and strengths of Deceivers is the living weapon super ability. So I've tried to really do that because you can actually, if you plan out your turn correctly, you can get more than 2 ranged attacks out of the models with living weapon per turn. So for instance, you would shoot and then perhaps living weapon into the hand of another model, which is then activating next, and then they would shoot twice with that same model, or shoot and then fly somewhere else, and then next turn shoot, and then unliving weapon and then shoot again. So it can be really brutal if you plan out how you use living weapon and what characters you use living weapon with. You can also, it's also pretty interesting for living weapon. Obviously, living weapon is 4 RA for the 2 living weapon characters, Electro Tyrant and Mega Tyrant, and they don't transfer across their special rules, but the special rules of the model that holds living weapon is used. So depending on what model gets living weapon, you could add like nuclear shells, you could add like, all sorts of extra special rules to a 4 RA attack.
It's boosted.
Depending on, yeah, or up to 5 RA attack. Yeah, of course, it's boosted. So it just depends who is using living weapon. Likewise, if you put living weapon on someone with air support, then you can fly your model to wherever you need to go, as almost like a sort of transport as well. So it certainly gives you loads of options. And look, Mega Tyrant is definitely in there because his close attack is no slouch either. Because he's got that combat mace, he's removing a shield from you. 3 close attacks, is pretty good. And so he can get into places, and even if you get sort of trapped, then he can still potentially fight his way out with 10 hit points and 4 shields. So yeah, I think he's really good for 25 points. Terra you might think he's quite high for 18, but when you put him with Mega Tyrant, he's brutal. This is actually, these two have been almost like a purposeful combo since first edition. No, not first edition. Yeah, maybe first edition. At least from early second edition. Is that even though Terra is uneasy ally, it matches well with Tyrannical because Megatron can still steal energy from any of the 3 cubes of Terra because of his Tyrannical special rule. So, and nuclear shells then just makes living weapon really brutal as well. So,
also
and
firing through, what is he? Is an SR3. So if he fires living weapon on SR3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 all have problems with their attack.
Correct. Yeah. And also if he gets into a tight spot and he is killed with Mega Tyrant, well, he's just resurrected. He's not actually killed. So it's sort of like a get out of jail free card for any living weapon held model there. So, and really, the others are all, apart from Electro Tyrant and Dark Angel, the others, they're like Crazy Symphony, Escape, they're all batteries to grab objectives and to supply extra energy. Electro Tyrant's there as sort of a backup RA, 4RA, and so is Dark Angel, there for a backup 4RA, and once again, Fear's just there to supply power to those. I mean, that's, if you play it right, you can get anywhere between 6 and 9 4RA shots a turn, which is like brutal. At close range, obviously, that can be boosted up to 5 RA, which is like pretty brutal. So yeah, is this sort of our balls to the wall list, but it is pretty nasty. The only real Achilles heel there is if your batteries start getting attacked and you start losing energy. But even with Mega Tyrant and Terra alone, they've probably got enough energy to do a couple of things themselves. And that's it, really.
I got to say, very strong range attack team.
Yes, yeah.
And Mega Tyrant's good in a close attack. The others not so much.
Yeah,
want them to be up and close and personal with something that like the Trashers or something like that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, the Deceivers aren't really. They're more, when they were developed, the Deceivers were never really developed as a heavy close attack force. They were always like a short ranged firepower force. And sort of part of their personalities, they don't really want to do the hard work as such. You know, so the Valiants are the opposite. They're much better with the ram attack and stuff like that to get up close and really smash people. But the Deceivers have never been like that, really.
The other thing I like about your list is Dark Angel, which I nearly took myself, but I was 1 point shy of taking her. For 15 points to get a 4 range attack is pretty impressive with 3 energy. Terrible in close, and she gets blast on that too. So yeah, for that 4 attack with blast, you're going to do lots of damage if you can land.
Well, it's an anti combiner, really. It's like with the blast and 4RA. She's the whole idea of her really is to at least give combiners a little bit of fear.
Absolutely, and I think she does a very effective job at that. Although she only has 5 hit points, which means they drop fire. But then if you're shooting at her, you're not shooting at Mega Tyrant or Electro Tyrant, which then puts you in danger of getting knocked out by them too. So,
well, that's right. And what's more, both her and Electro Tyrant are activating really early. Like Electro Tyrant's activating on a 2 with the 4RA and Surge. Like if I was a combiner, I'd be concerned about that as well. So, and then you've got Dark Angel activating onto 3 with 4RA and Blast.
Yes.
Which is like, yeah, I think it's a deadly combination, those two.
which gives your list that ability to be able to position. And even if you lose one, you've still got 2 very good long-range shooters taking down and picking off targets as they go. It's another strong area of your list. So, yeah, I like your list. Drew, Stuart, comments?
Yeah, I like it as well. I think there's some similarities between mine and Anthony's list. But just a question, when you do living weapon, does the special ability, like say for example, Electro Tyrant's got Surge, that doesn't transfer to the
correct
using a living weapon, right? Okay, yeah, because that would make it naughty.
But for instance, if you had living weapon that became living weapon and was picked up by Crazy, well then it would have Surge. Because Crazy's got Surge. So it basically allows you to swap, or if it's picked up by Scope, then the weapon has blinded. So it allows you to sort of synergize with different characters to get 4RA with a real possibility of a certain special rule on it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool because you could do the 2 living weapons quite early on as well, because having Fear, if you give Fear the Electro Tyrant as a living weapon and then Terror Mega Tyrant as a living weapon, you've got 2 pretty early going high range attacks, and then
you could do an Alpha Strike in the sense that if you just poured all the cubes onto Fear and Electro Tyrant and Mega Tyrant and Terror, then first turn Fear and Terror fly over and basically just blast everybody at close range. Or start of second turn, they fly over and blast everyone at close range, and then Mega Tyrant, Electro Tyrant appear and then blast everybody again at close range. So. Yeah. Don't bundle your models up at the back of the table.
I have a question on living weapon. Can you start the game in living weapon, or
I can't remember. I think I FAQ'd it that you could, but I can't. I didn't want to say that I could in this because I can't remember now if I did FAQ it or not, or whether it could be FAQ'd. Whether it explicitly states that it can't. So I'm just saying second turn.
Yep.
Second turn you can go and do it, not first turn.
Because I can imagine a few people starting in living weapon, basically that air support ability, popping down and absolutely annihilating everything on the back of the board and on the first.
Yeah. Well, if you roll like me, you don't annihilate anything, and you basically cause like 2 damage and then get pounded into the ground and have to resurrect at the back of the board. But everybody else just absolutely slays.
I share your approach there, Anthony. It's bad dice rolls. That's a great list. Drew, do you got anything else you want to add?
No, I just like the possibility of the Electro Tyrant and Fear, with Bully and everything, cleaning up all those obscured characters in the background that are like little energy batteries and whatnot, just completely mowing all of those guys down.
Absolutely. Somebody goes from being able to activate to not being able to activate very well at all.
Yeah.
Great list, Anthony. Let's have a look at Drew's list. I'll throw across to you, Drew. Tell us all about it.
I think I was influenced pretty heavily from the Infestors, the Hive Lords talk we had last time. And, I kind of went with more of the elite force and everybody else kind of went with the high activation count. So I think I kind of flip-flopped it because I assumed everyone was going to go with a very meaty, punch you in the face list, kind of like what we saw with Anthony. So I went with 11 activations on this. I was just kind of seeing how much I could dump into it. And
I think that's a strong list. It actually makes a big difference with the more you have in BotWar. Like 11 activations is pretty good.
It is.
Yeah.
Look at your energy compared to Anthony's 25.
Yeah. Yeah, Volt
This
Volt
is
was in there
AT.
specifically. Yeah.
And look at the
for-
damage. Look at the damage.
Yeah.
Hit points.
Yeah, your hit points are 56 versus Anthony 48. Yeah, there's a few things you've got there that in the totals give you quite a bit of advantage.
Yeah, I was going for like a fairly heavy objective grabbing team. Because the dice pools aren't terribly effective at range at 2 and whatnot, unless you have Mega Tyrant turn into living weapon. But that's also one thing I liked about all the little mini bots and whatnot, is that you could kind of pass Mega Tyrant around depending on what force you were fighting against, because gas gun, surge, disorientate, blinded, so you could kind of manipulate the battlefield with a better dice pool depending on who you're going up against. I also liked having all the mirrors in for blinded, so it would kind of give you that buffer if they had a good range team, so they would have to come in on you. And then if you had enough models, you could team up on them, get the extra close combat die to fill in for your lack of close combat attack. And then Volt, of course, is in there specifically to be a energy battery, because that was one thing I really noticed, is that Deceivers, most of them have 2 energy. So it's like, well, they can do their thing, which is appropriate for them, that they're not sharing it around and everything. But yeah, so it's like that 4 energy is just too tempting not to take.
I took it for the same reason.
Yeah. And then of course, you got communicator in there to host and bring everything in. I thought about doing Sonic instead, but communicator is just too, I don't know. I love the model. He's got decent stats. I like the mind read ability a whole lot. That's one of my favorite abilities in the whole game and everything. So that was kind of like, well, I got to take him. And then, yeah. And like I said, I kind of covered the general thought process on the whole thing.
Like
the only thing I do different is swap out one Mirror Warrior for Scope, because Scope is really sort of like the best Mirror Warrior for the same points.
Yeah, I almost did that, but I don't know. I was going for a kind of a themey, memey list.
Look, and there's so many different special abilities there to pick from and utilize. I've got to say, you could catch.
You got enough stealth.
Yeah, so much stealth. But even with gas gun, like with heavy rift and gas gun, that could be quite nasty in certain circumstances as well.
Yeah.
Stuart, what do you think?
Oh, I think it's really good. Like you said, like there's a load of stealth in there. So if you're going for objective grabs and stuff, like you can make it quite hard for people to zero in on your stuff unless they get close. And of course, the closer they get, the more chance they've got of being hit by like your living weapon or your any of the models that you've got with a decent ranged attack. So yeah, I think it's really good. It's definitely very themed.
Anthony?
Yeah, very, very themed.
Yeah,
it's very themed. Like it's I'm good. This is probably the first list I've seen Heavy Rift in. It's like we've got. What are your plans, Drew? Do you think you'll have a few of the symbiotes start in Communicator, or will they all be on the field? Off the
I don't
bat?
think I'd completely load him up, but give him a handful to kind of run up the board, just because he's got an extra inch movement on top of them or whatever. So if there's a good place to drop them off, kind of as either a hideout or an objective grab, where they could kind of all team up together, I think that would be the play, but of course it's real board dependent and everything, and who you wanted to take where.
Mm. Yeah.
These are
Cool.
all quite the smaller ones, aren't they? They're all
Mhm.
mostly, apart from Communicator and
Yeah, he's got
Megatyrant,
5
they're all on
symbiotes in there.
32 mil bases.
Yep.
Like,
Lots of 32 mil base. I mean, if you look at just
it's
stats,
like,
good amount of energy compared to Anthony. So much more energy to play with.
mm.
Anthony's was 18, yours 25. So that gives you a few
I
extra
think
activations.
I think having the 11 deployments is really good. I do think though that you'll have to be careful with the lower damage ones like Volt and the other symbiotes, because I think that energy, even though it's 25, you'll lose it a lot faster. Because, and even though you got like 56 damage, I mean that's spread pretty thin across a few models.
Yeah,
I think
it's definitely quality over quantity over quality.
Because I think like if you lose Megatorrent and Communicator, I think you're going to struggle.
Oh yeah,
like big time.
I agree with that.
Yeah, because they're those two are the ones that are doing most of your heavy lifting.
Yeah, and
But if they group attack, they could actually do all right in close attack if you got like 3 or 4.
Yeah, 100%. And Mind Read is no slouch. Like Mind Read is probably one of the nastiest special rules in the game. And really, what it is just like all you're doing is queuing people for Megatorrent to blast.
Yes.
With Mind Read. so yeah, it's quite interesting. And you can always Mind Read. You can always Mind Read like combiners or anything. So yeah, it's pretty brutal.
It is. Yeah. You've still got a lot of activations at 4. Maximum's 10 with Megatyrant, of course. But generally, you're activating 4, 5, or 6. Anthony's still beating you a little bit there. He's activating on most of the occasions. But when you come to my list, you'll be activating before most of mine actually get a chance to go. So I think that's an interesting consideration as well. Because as you can see with Anthony's list over here, he's got a few 2s and 3s that like Terra, Electro Tyrant, Fear, Dark Angel. They're all those lower activations. Scope is like the second last model to activate, and then you got Mega Tyrant. So you're going much earlier in the play cycle, missing out on those later activations in the round, Anthony. Where when you look at Drew's list, obviously he's sort of just that little bit later, but still coming in there quite early. If you compare it to my lists all start like I actually went with a Narcitron, but most of mine are coming at 6. So
yeah, look at that.
You guys are all going to be sort of getting in and taking some of my models down before I even get a chance to go. So with that in mind, I'll talk you through my list. So I took Narcitron. I took a little bit of a different line. I went with a lower point, fairly still meaty leading character. Dropped 1 range attack, but still got good close attack. Has 3 energy. Goes one point faster than Mega Tyrant. Still has Tyrannical, so it can move energy around. Has the combat sword and the combat scimitar to sort of make things a little bit more nasty when certain
and air support.
Yeah, and air support.
So he's more maneuverable than Mega Tyrant.
I've then gone Siren because I wanted her disorient. And she's got air support. So I thought that could be really nasty. I know that a lot of people take in the Valiants, they love the birds for their disorient ability because they can zoom in, disorient, stop things from sort of working, and that allows somebody like Narcitron or Mega Tyrant to sort of pick things off. And so that's where Siren was coming in this particular case. Particularly effective on things like combiners, which I'm about to talk about, or a range of other characters that have been all grouped together in perhaps a foolish way. We can sort of utilize that. Volt because he's a battery, as Drew has mentioned before. And then I've taken the combiner Deceivers in my list, which are all activating on 6, which is dump truck, digger, loader, roller, and dozer. I'm not sure whether I combine them, but I could combine them if I wanted to, and get Destructor out. And then
so if you're not combining and you're playing a heavy Valiant list,
yes, all have ram attack. They all have ram attack. Which is something that people forget, that you still do have some ram attack in your Deceiver lists, depending on how you choose it. So you can run different ways there. And I got to say, with a lot of those combiner ones, they've all got pretty much 3 range attack and 2 close attack. So they're they've got
the Valiant Warriors basically.
Yeah. Maybe their hit points are a little bit on the low side, but they bring plenty of energy. And then we've got the Corruptor as well. I put Corruptor in because it was exactly 14 points. I really wanted Dark Angel for that last heavy hitting firepower, but I was 1 point short. So I bought in Corruptor. I was really keen on Sophine. You mentioned her earlier, Anthony, because she's got mind control. But she activates quite late, and I wasn't sure how effective that would be, depending on which list was chosen. But she's could be easily added to this list as opposed to Corruptor as another option.
I with your list there, I'd swap Volt out for Crazy and Symphony to get the 4 energy for 8 points.
Yep.
And then put in Dark Angel.
Yes, I could do that.
And have 1 point left over.
Yep. And that would actually increase everything because I get actually more energy out of that.
Yeah.
So that's well spotted.
I always think that the 2 smaller symbiotes, like rather than have one, like Volt's great in Drew's list because he's already using all the symbiotes. And so Volt gives that extra massive energy boost at the end. But if you're looking side by side, you can split your 2 energy across 2 models on 2 opposite sides of the table, or you can put the 4 energy on one single model with the same and across 8 hit points, or you could put 4 energy across 4 hit points in one place.
Well spotted.
So,
I may well change that when I play you next, Anthony, with Deceivers.
Yeah. It's just I've just found that that's how, like, Volt is good for certain he's like situationally. If you're using the other symbiotes and stuff like that, then he is a great sort of quasi symbiote with extra energy. But I would probably choose him last after taking those 2 cheaper symbiotes for the same amount of energy and double the hit points.
Any other thoughts, Drew, Stuart?
I like that you threw the avatar in there, just like, I don't know, the variety of that. And like Anthony said, it didn't even occur to me, like, here you go, here's a bunch of ram attack that no one else in the Deceivers has. So that's an interesting way to just throw, if someone's used to playing against Deceivers and they're like, okay, they're going to be flying all across the board and everything. You're like, well, I'm just going to stomp up here and punch you in the face real hard.
And that's where I was going with it. I wanted to produce a different list that, and again, shows that if you play a Deceiver list in a tournament, there are a range of ways you can play Deceivers. As a faction, you could choose to have more that ram attack style force, or you could do an air support. You can't guarantee that when you play Deceivers that it's going to be a particular type of game because there's such variability in their force and how you can actually use it. And so that was another reason why I took this list, just to sort of show that diversity that you do have with this particular faction. Obviously, much more heavy in its range attack ability than its close attack, but it's still got better close attack than I believe Anthony's. Has pretty heavy shields. 51.
Well, it's got much better close attack than that number suggests, because with ram attack, you're potentially getting extra black dice as well.
Indeed,
for that,
and amps it up a lot more.
Yeah.
You guys beat me on most of the strategic rating. I think yours was way lower. So, I mean, if my guys survive the first few rounds and they can get in close with ram attack, I can do a lot of damage, but they've got to get to that point. So anyway, that just sort of highlights, and I do get 22 energy, which I know isn't quite as good as Drew's list, but it is better than Anthony's list on energy starting the game. So I think that's an interesting thing as well. So, but you are right. If I'd swapped out Volt, used the 2 smaller symbiotes, and then put in Dark Angel, I would have actually
jumped.
I would have
got 23 energy.
Correct, and I would have got more range attack and a range of other factors as well. So
yeah,
they are improvements that I can definitely make.
Yeah.
Stuart?
No, I like it. I was tempted as well to do the combiners, put them in my list. I had kind of two themes I was sort of hovering around, but I think it's really good. But you've still got that air support, which I think is always going to be a feature of a Deceiver list. You're always going to have 1 or 2, which I think is good for like objective grabbing and just repositioning as well.
Absolutely. If I can get Siren to play properly and she doesn't get taken out, I want to use that disorient on a group of bots that are all together. And if you can get them, admittedly, she's a little bit slower on a strategic rating, but if you can get the right models there, that could be very, very painful for the competitor that you're playing against. Obviously not being able to do very much. So anyway, that's my list, and I'll throw across to Stuart, and he can talk us through his.
Yeah. So I went for something very, very. I wanted to have a bit of a beat stick in with the like the sort of early turn. So similar to Anthony's list, I've got obviously Mega Tyrant in there, and Terra, and I wanted to be able to use the living weapon with Terra to up his ranged attack to 4, and twin that with like the nuclear shells, and to really cause some pain on my opponent, because I think that, especially because he's on SR3, he activates quite early turn, and he's going to force a lot of energy expenditure from higher SR models. And what was the Dark Blessing? What's Dark Blessing do again? I put that on there because I thought that was quite.
Blast. Is it the extra energy? Yeah. Oh, it's Blast.
Yep.
It's Blast. So it's as he shoots. Obviously, he shoots. If he catches anybody in the blast range, he causes 1 damage. It doesn't just affect the person that you're firing at; it affects a number around. So if somebody's got like combiners, you could force them, rather than linking up, it forces them to spend a lot more energy than they would do to.
Who have you got Dark Blessing on? Terra,
yeah.
So that means the nuclear shell would also go with the blast, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So you'd be stacking nuclear shell on a range of people with the blast. Is that correct, Anthony?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But you could also put well, if you put Dark Blessing on Turbo, and Turbo air supports over towards a combiner, then the Sonic Boom causes 1 automatic wound, and then Blast causes an automatic wound on every other one.
Yeah.
So you got like so you could potentially, if you you wouldn't kill the combiner, but you would actually cause a whole host of automatic wounds for not even having to get through the shields. So just go Sonic Boom, bang, Dark Blessing, bang, 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 bang.
Yeah, there's quite a few. There's a couple of, I suppose, little. I mean, I put the Dark Blessing on there for Terra because I thought that the energy I wanted to go for that. The detriment of making them spend their energy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because then like you put 2 or 3. If somebody's put 2 energy on one of the characters or a few of the characters, then that's whatever you're doing, you're just getting 1 activation.
Yes.
Or you're not able to boost, so you're not able to. There's a whole range of things that you're kind of restricted by doing that. So adding blast to the nuclear shells, I thought was quite nasty. And then if he's got the living weapon, it's 4 range attack. It's pretty gnarly. But I wanted a few air support in there, so I've got it's quite a fast list, I think. Other than
Mega Tyrant.
Yeah, other than Mega Tyrant. I mean, even the other guys. I mean, Communicator, like Symphony Crazy, Scope and Mirror really were put in as like sort of a second wave, and for objective capture. I think stealth helps with that. Or they can just be there as batteries to boost up the Mega Tyrant Terra or Mega Tyrant Turbo combination.
Wonder how many people you kill if you had Dread Turbo with Dark Blessing, and so Dread goes over to Sonic Boom, automatic damage, and then Turbo goes over Sonic Boom, automatic damage, then blast on every other person that takes an automatic damage.
We're already changing our list, Anthony.
Oh, sorry.
You'd do a lot of damage. You could effectively do a massive amount of damage, wouldn't you? And it'd be automatic.
Well, it depends how, I guess, whether it was against a combiner or whether a bunch of people were all clumped up or something like that. But potentially, you wouldn't kill anyone, I think. That's the problem. But you would actually chip some serious chip damage off a lot of people.
Well, you definitely soften them up before they could do their thing, especially if it was like trashers or something. If you could just get them while they're coming in.
Then you pick them off with somebody like Mega.
The trouble is, you die in return against trashers because they would just all charge you and hack you to pieces with their remaining damage. But it's good that auto damage is good for things like combiners with like your 6 shield dice and stuff that you would struggle to get past otherwise. But doing automatic damage actually can really knock, because I mean most of those combiners, they would only have 5 damage a piece on most of them. So if you did a Sonic Boom and then it's blasted, well, now they've all only got 4 damage a piece, like all of them.
Yeah.
So that's pretty. Imagine how much that would take if you were just shooting a combiner to get that. Like that's a lot. You have to break through 6 shields to do a damage. So, and you're just doing that automatically on everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because blast's kind of the best way of dealing with
combiners.
Combiners. If you can do it. Blast's always the best way, because like you say, once you score damage, it's 1 on everything. And you're looking for at least one of them to drop off, aren't you?
Yeah.
It structs and they all fall down on top of one another.
Yeah. Yeah. But I thought this was like I say, it's looking for ways to combine the abilities and the upgrade cards. Upgrade cards are an odd thing. Sometimes I use them, sometimes I don't. But I thought Dark Blessing, the ability to add blast to something, was really, really quite good. It's only 3 points as well.
I like the Deceiver one. I like the Deceiver one that's basically just nullifies anyone else's upgrade.
Yes. Yeah.
I used to take that a lot. It's become way more useful now that upgrades are becoming more of a thing. It's just like, oh yeah, that upgrade that you sort of built your whole army around, it's gone. So,
I tried to squeeze that into my list and just couldn't do it.
Drew, are you proposing we increase it from 100 to 110?
Yes, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, imagine
Always
trying to do
another
these
few
lists at 70.
Well, imagine someone like that has the code spear, right? They've got the code spear and they've scouted their model, like Green Spectre model, forward with the code spear, which is like really brutal weapon. And you just go, Dark Entity, no thanks. Code spear is now just a stick.
Yep.
It's just a stick. Yeah.
It's a spear, not a code spear.
Yeah, that's right.
Great list, Stuart. I think it's a good list. Obviously, very strong range attack. Not too bad on close attack. Good shields, good hit points. Maybe not quite as big amount of energy, but still got more energy, unfortunately, than poor Anthony's energy. What those objective energies there in your game, though, Anthony? If that's the
I only had 3 models that planned on doing anything, so that's
the other.
And I had 18 energy, so I had 6 energy apiece.
Plenty of energy. Look, it's a great list.
Stuart's list looks like mine and Anthony's list had a baby.
Yeah.
With a dark blessing on top.
Yeah.
Look, great list. That brings us to the conclusion of today's show. Does anybody have any final comments?
No, not really. I guess people should put down their lists in the comments if they've got a Deceiver list that they like or particular characters that they like. I see that Mega Tyrant made his way into most of the lists. I think you could, if you went away from shooting, actually make a full Narcitron list. I think would be pretty cool. So yeah, no, I think it's good to go back to the Deceivers. I think they're quite a strong list. There's plenty of options there as well. We didn't really talk about Death Tyrants, but I guess that could be a show of its own.
Well, I almost took him instead of Narcitron, I'll be honest. But I thought, no, Narcitron's just got a few extra abilities. But just that few points less and still a very strong character. It was very attractive. And yes, maybe we do a Death Tyrant special edition.
I'm not sure many people know the Death Tyrant's army. Because you sort of got to buy the Death Tyrant's army to have it as such. But yeah. Interesting.
Would have that.
It was fun. This is the most I've done of a deep dive into Deceivers. Like I've kind of, I've looked at the models and everything, but never really like tried to flesh out a list. So it was fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. As a like you say, as a deep dive. It was interesting to go in and have a look at the different stats. Because I don't think I've really looked at them other than Electro Tyrant and his drone army. I haven't really touched on the rest of the Deceivers, so it was quite nice to get in there and have a good look at what they can do.
Well, yeah, Electro Tyrant's very different to a Deceivers list. It's
very different.
Well, that brings us to what are we going to talk about next time? But we may have to stay tuned because I'm not sure we've got that far yet.
I have no idea.
But that show will either be in December, but we have to keep in mind that we've got Christmas and New Year's. And so it'll either be before Christmas or it'll be after, depending on whether we can get all of our team one place at one time to have that talk. But hopefully we will get a chance. So stay tuned for that show. Thanks for watching. And we'll look forward
to Mark.
Next one. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Yep. Thanks. Goodbye.